Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Prema Ramachandran from Nutrition Foundation of India, New Delhi. Today, I am going to talk about national programs to improve food security and nutritional status. This is from Paper 7, Macronutrient Nutrition. The object of this module is to make you understand how national programs to improve household food security are formulated and implemented, make you learn how these programs brought about improvement in food production, economic access to food supplementation programs, and also learn how nutritional status of individuals have changed over time, and finally, taking these changes into account, the national programs to improve food security and nutritional status have undergone modifications. Formulation of national programs to improve food security and nutritional status of Indians. India has 2.5% of global land mass and is the home of 17% of global population. The country considered its population as a major potential resource for national development and recognized the importance of optimal nutrition and health for human resource development. India's Constitution, Article 47, stated that the state shall regard raising the level of nutrition and standard of living of its people and improvement in public health among its primary duties. India's 5-year plans enunciated policies, laid down multi-pronged strategies, outlined multi-sectoral programs to improve food security, nutritional and health status of the population. They laid down the goals to be achieved within a specified time frame and also provided the needed funds to implement these interventions. Progress in these programs were reviewed once in 5 years, and based on the review, priorities were redrawn, programs modified, needed funds provided, and a new set of goals to be achieved in the next 5 years were set. When India became independent, the country was not self-sufficient in food grain production, and over 80% of Indians were poor and food insecure. The country faced two major nutritional problems. One was the threat of famine and resulted acute starvation due to low agricultural production and lack of an appropriate food distribution system. The second was high prevalence of macro and micronutrient deficiencies due to low dietary intake, mainly because of poverty and low purchasing power, a very high prevalence of infection because of poor access to safe drinking water, sanitation, and healthcare, poor utilization of available facilities due to low literacy and lack of awareness added to the problem. If we start looking at the health and nutritional indicators in 1951, the birth rate was very high, 40.8. Crude death rate was also high but falling. The population growth rate was high because of high fertility and relatively lower mortality. High priority was accorded, therefore, for interventions for improving agricultural production to meet the needs of growing population, reducing population growth to sustainable levels, and improving access to healthcare and improving health and nutritional status. The interventions have to be multi-pronged. The first, of course, for improving food security at a national level was by increasing food production, building up buffer stocks, and improving food distribution through building up of public distribution system. Efforts were also made to improve household food security through economic improvement and poverty reduction, aimed at improving purchasing power of the families, providing food for work programs, and direct or indirect food subsidy. The second tier of interventions to improve food security and nutritional status consisted of food supplementation programs aimed to bridge the gap between food requirement and food intake in women and children. This is the Integrated Child Development Services and MidDay Meal. Weighing all preschool children and school children for early detection and effective management of undernutrition was also part of this program. In addition, we had the effects of health sector to tackle adverse health consequences of undernutrition, adverse effect of infection and unwanted fertility on nutritional status of the mother and her children, and micronutrient deficiencies and their health consequences. Nutrition and health education to improve awareness and enable the population to optimally utilize available services was also given due attention. Today it is 2015. What have we achieved in the last 65 years, and what is the unfinished agenda? There are no more famines since independence. Self-sufficiency in food production since 1970 is a reality. The country will remain self-sufficient in cereal production in the foreseeable future up to 2030. There has been a fair GDP growth and poverty reduction. Poverty and inability to purchase food are no longer the major factors responsible for undernutrition in children. Today, there is universal access to ICDS and reproductive and child health services. But coverage, content, and quality of services provided are often suboptimal, especially in the remoter parts of the country. We do have some remaining problems. There has been no reduction in low birth weight rates, nor is there any reduction in anemia. Decline in child undernutrition has been much slower than what we wanted it to be, and overnutrition is emerging as a public health problem. We will now review the progress in the last 6 decades in implementation of national programs to improve food security and nutritional status of Indians. To begin with, you need to have perspective as to where from did we start and where have we reached today. We all understand food production is the very first step for improving food security, either at home level or at national level. The Green Revolution in India changed massively a country which was dependent for imports of food in order to render the population safe, that is, what was called as ship-to-mouth existence, to self-sufficiency within a decade. Many of us scientists believe that this is mainly due to the science and technology innovation, but it has to be backed, and it was backed by policy and program interventions, investment in irrigation at a time when industry was competing with irrigation for funds was an important changing point. Land reforms, which provided the reason for all the agricultural communities to invest their time and effort in improving productivity, was another major step. Fertilizers, production and subsidy was the next innovation that helped the farmer. To a farmer who grows food, how do we sell it is always a problem. Government came up with 2 major reforms: minimum support price and farm level procurement of rice and wheat. These, when backed up by the R&D support for development of high yielding strains of rice and wheat, and more importantly, lab to land extension education, enabled the country to achieve massive improvement in productivity. Perhaps this is a very good example what Indians can do when they are driven to a corner, could be called today as a mission mode public-private partnership to achieve a national goal in a very record time. At that time, however, no one has heard any of these terms, but still their performance showed that they understood the philosophy and followed it. In 2007, India launched the National Food Security Mission with the following objectives: to increase the production of rice and wheat through productivity increase the pulse production through area expansion and productivity enhancement in a sustainable manner, restore soil fertility and productivity at the individual farm level, and enhance farm level economy, that is farm profits, to restore confidence of the farmers for improving food production in selected districts. As a result of this initiative, India's food grain production has grown as envisaged, and India will remain self-sufficient in food production till 2030. Some problems in nutrition orientation of food production policies, especially in relation to pulses. Pulses are the major source of protein in Indian dietaries. While food grain production quadrupled and met the records of growing population, pulse production had been stagnant for 3 decades at 13 million tons. Gap between demand and supply necessitated import of pulses. Cost of pulses soared. In spite of continued expenditure on pulses, the household consumption of pulses has come down. Reduction in pulse consumption will have adverse effect on nutrient intake and nutritional status of the population. Therefore, the 10th five-year plan focused on nutrition orientation of food production and policies and programs. Initiatives taken under the National Food Security Mission have now resulted in pulse production growing by 2 million metric tons per year. India is expected to become self-sufficient in pulse production, that is, attain 24 million tons per year by 2017. Yet another important nutrition orientation in food production is growing vegetables. Fruits and vegetables provide essential micronutrients vital for nutrition and health. India currently is number 1 or number 2 in the production of vegetables and fruits. Export earnings from fruits and vegetables are growing, but per capita vegetable and fruit consumption among Indians continues to be quite low in all segments of population, including families who have no economic constraints. Low vegetable consumption is the major factor responsible for widespread anemia and micronutrient deficiencies. Nutrition education for increase in vegetable consumption to improve micronutrient status and reduce non-communicable diseases can succeed only when vegetables are available throughout the year at affordable cost. The National Horticultural Mission has been set up with a mandate to focus on production, processing, marketing of low-cost, nutrient-rich vegetables so that vegetables are available and affordable. The aware, enabled population can buy and eat more vegetables, combating thereby the large problem of micronutrient undernutrition. Even when we grow enough food, economic access to food becomes very important. In 1970, when India became self-sufficient in food grain production, a review of nutritional status of the population showed that over 70% of Indian population continued to be poor. They spent over 70% of their income on food. Despite this heavy expenditure, over 70% were undernourished. Morbidity due to infections was high, and these extracted a heavy nutrition toll. Access to essential health services was low, and longevity at birth continued to be low. The country therefore concluded that mere self-sufficiency in food grain production will not improve household food security or nutrition and health status of the individuals. India therefore embarked on adapting a holistic strategy for improving food security among the poor. India used the following criterion for identification of poor, that is, the expenditure group with energy intake of 2100 kilocalories in urban population and 2400 kilocalories in rural population were taken as for defining the poverty line. The strategy was to identify people living below poverty line, improve their purchasing power through employment programs, provide them with all essential goods such as subsidized food grains and food supplementation programs to vulnerable groups, provide services free of cost. This includes safe drinking water, adequate sanitation, education, and essential health care. All these are to be provided on the basis of need and not on the ability to pay. It was expected that these steps will improve food security and result in reduction in prevalence of undernutrition and micronutrient deficiencies. India invested heavily in poverty alleviation programs. Instead of providing food doles, India provided employment programs for the poor to improve purchasing power and food security. Right from 1960, India has implemented employment programs such as Employment Assurance Scheme, National Rural Employment Program, Jawahar Rozgar Yojana, Sampurna Gramin Rozgar Yojana, and National Food for Work Program. In 2005, India enacted National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, providing legal entitlement for work to the unemployed rural person. These programs served dual purposes. One, of improving rural infrastructure, and second, improving purchasing power and household food security of the poor. How far have we progressed in terms of poverty alleviation? After a relatively low but steady growth in GDP in the last century, India has experienced high GDP growth in the last decade. As a result, there has been more rapid decline in poverty. During the 11-year period from 1993 to 94, 2004 to 5, average decline in poverty was about 0.74 per year. It accelerated to 2.8% per year in the 7-year period between 2004 and 2012. The rate of decline in rural poverty was higher than urban poverty, and India has achieved the MDG goal for poverty reduction. How do we improve household food security? One another mechanism was providing subsidized food grains to the poor through public distribution systems. Cereals are the major source of energy in Indian diets. Over the last 4 decades, there has been a decline in cereal consumption and energy intake among the rich, an increase in cereal consumption among the poor. Differences between urban and rural and different expenditure tertiles have now narrowed. As of 2009-10, cereal intakes are essentially similar in all groups and is adequate to meet the cereal requirements of Indians. Providing adequate food grains and vegetables to population is not a question of production alone. Unless these are available at an affordable cost to the population, household food security is not possible in spite of national adequate production of these. We were not really troubled by food inflation until about 10 years ago. But since 2005, globally and in India, there is an emerging threat of food inflation which threatens household food security in spite of adequate production at the national level. Food price inflation has become a major threat to food security at the household level in India. From 2005, India has witnessed high food inflation. Till 2009, the GDP growth rate was higher than food inflation, and therefore the people did not suffer very badly. However, since 2010, GDP growth rate has dipped and food inflation continues to rise. Annual inflation rates was much higher for foodstuffs than non-food commodities. Annual inflation for cereals was about 10% between 2006 and 10. Pulse prices showed huge inflation, 31% in 2006-7 and 22% in 9-10. The annual inflation rates for vegetable ranged between 8% to 11% in 2007-8 and 16% in 2010-11. There were growing concerns that sustained increase in food price inflation may adversely affect the household food security and nutritional status of the citizens. In September 2013, India became the first country to enact a food security legislation through which over 2/3 of the citizens are entitled to get subsidized food grains through public distribution system. Food supplementation programs, especially the integrated child development services, have been implemented in the country since mid-70s. The Food Security Act 2013 has the following main provisions. It aims to improve household food security by providing subsidized food grains as a legal entitlement to 2/3 of Indian citizens. Priority households are entitled to 5 kg of food grains per person per month. The poorest of the poor, Antyodaya households, are entitled to 35 kilos per household per month. The combined coverage of priority and Antyodaya households, so-called eligible households, is up to 75% in rural population and up to 50% in urban population. The ongoing programs of food supplementation to pregnant and lactating women and preschool and school children will be supported under the Food Security Act. The type of supplement and composition of supplement varies depending upon groups. For 3 to 36 months, it is take-home rations containing 500 grams of energy and 12 to 15 grams of protein. For the 3 to 6-year-old, it is morning snacks and hot-cooked meals, providing energy of 500 calories and protein of 12 to 15 grams. For undernourished children in the age group 6 months to 6 years, take-home rations containing 800 kilocalories of energy and 20 to 25 grams of protein is to be given. Under the midday meal, 6 to 11-year-old children will get hot-cooked meal of 450 kilocalories energy and 12 grams of protein. The upper primary children between 11 and 14 years of age will get hot-cooked meal of 700 kilocalorie energy, 20 grams of protein. Pregnant and lactating women will get take-home rations, 600 calories of energy and 18 to 20 grams of protein. The central government is to determine state-wise coverage of proportion of rural and urban population from the census. Identification of eligible households is the responsibility of the state governments. Eligible households will receive subsidized food grains through targeted public distribution system. The issue prices are 3 rupees per kg for rice, 2 rupees per kg for wheat, and 1 rupee per kg for millets. The issue price may be revised after 3 years. The responsibility of the central government is to procure food grains, create and maintain adequate modern food storage facilities to prevent wastage, allocate and transport food grains to the states. The state governments will take delivery of the food grains and ensure their transport and distribution right up to the targeted public distribution system. The people's representative in the local self-government will monitor implementation at the local level right up to the households or places where food supplementation programs are implemented. There will be a social audit of the program at all levels. Appropriate grievance redressal mechanisms will be set up, and these will include call centers, helplines, and designated nodal officers. But food grains alone cannot provide a balanced meal. Some states like Chhattisgarh and Tamil Nadu provide pulses on subsidized cost through PDS. There has been attempts to provide oil, iodized and iron fortified salt, or iron and iodine fortified salt through public distribution system at a subsidized cost. However, it will never be possible to provide all the foodstuffs at a subsidized cost to all the needy. Therefore, there is an urgent need for nutrition awareness campaign with a focus on women who are the head of the household in the ration card on how much the money saved because of subsidized food grains, estimated to be approximately rupees 500 per month, can be used for purchasing other foodstuffs such as vegetables and pulses so that the family can have appropriate balanced meal. Integrated Child Development Services was launched in 1975 with the following objectives: to improve health and nutritional status of children in the 0 to 6 year age group by providing supplementary food and coordinating with the State Health Department to ensure delivery of the required health inputs; to provide conditions necessary for preschool children's psychological and social development through early stimulation and education, to provide pregnant and lactating women with food supplements, to enhance mothers' ability to provide proper child care through health and nutrition education, and finally, to achieve effective coordination of policy and implementation of various departments to promote child development. ICDS currently covers the entire country. However, data from National Family Health Survey 3 indicate that coverage of children for weighing, especially in the critical first 2 years, is very low. Coverage under food supplementation in the Anganwadi also continues to be low. And finally, nutrition education, which is the critical input needed in the current context, is either non-existent or is of poor quality. There has been an increase in the number of children and number of pregnant women and lactating women who are covered in the ICDS program, but coverage is quite low in terms of proportion of eligible persons who are continuously receiving supplements. Very often, food supplement provided acts as a substitute or is shared between family members. Critically, undernourished persons are not identified and given double rations and their weight monitored. Without these three critical inputs, it is not possible to achieve substantial improvement in nutritional status either of pregnant women or children below 6 years. We all accept that nutrition education is the critical intervention for prevention of undernutrition in preschool children. What are the key nutrition messages? It is promotion of exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months, appropriate, adequate complementary feeding 3 to 5 times a day from 6 months of age, continued breastfeeding and feeding family food 4 to 5 times a day up to 24 months, feeding 2 to 5-year-old children at least 4 to 6 times a day from the family food consisting of cereals, pulses and vegetables. In addition, timely immunization, measures to prevent infection, and care during illness and convalescence will prevent deterioration in nutritional status. As has been repeatedly stated, nutrition education has been the weakest component in ICDS. In order to improve availability of credible infant and young child feeding practices, the Department of Health and Department of Women and Child Development have brought out a mother-child protection card giving both pictorial depictions and written messages providing information on what is the appropriate feeding practice in the 0 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 1 to 2 year and 2 years and beyond feeding practices. These cards are supposed to be available to all children born in the country. However, even now, there is substantial gap in distribution of these cards. Once distributed, these cards can really play a very important role in improving infant and young child feeding practices. Another initiative that is supported by the Mother-Child Protection Card is detection of undernutrition using WHO Child Growth Standards 2006. WHO Growth Standards provide standards for assessment of nutritional status using height, weight and BMI for age in 0 to 5-year children based on the growth of breastfed infants in 6 countries, 5 to 18-year-old children based on the NCHS database. Both these have been accepted by the Government of India and the MGRS standard has been incorporated in the Mother-Child Protection Chart. One of the major problems that ICDS faced was the non-availability of accurate, readily portable balances. With the electronic balances which are battery operated being available at a really inexpensive cost, measurement of weight of infants has now become extremely easy. All infants under 1 year can be weighed with the mother. In this graph, you can see weight of the mother when she is carrying the infant is 59.3 kg. Weight of mother alone is 54.2 kg. Therefore, the infant's weight is 5.1 kg. This measurement is accurate and could be put along with the growth chart to assess how the child is growing. Growth of infants and under 5 children can be monitored by plotting weight for age on the growth chart in the mother-child protection card. This enables early detection of growth faltering and undernutrition. Such children who are showing growth faltering and undernutrition should get double rations. Once the cards are used for early detection and effective management of both undernutrition and in case there is infection, management of infection too, there will be substantial improvement in nutritional status of children. Yet another major opportunity to improve nutritional status of children is provided by the MidDay Meal program. In 1995, Government of India initiated the National Program for Nutrition Support for Primary Education. This is commonly known as MidDay Meal program. The objectives of the MidDay Meal program are essentially to increase enrollment, improve school attendance and retention, inculcate good food habits in children, promotion of social integration, and finally, if possible, improve nutritional status of primary school children. Initially, 3 kg of wheat or rice was provided per month to school children who had more than 80% attendance in the previous month. This program did result in some improvement in enrollment and retention in some states with poor enrollment and retention rates. However, this did not address the problem of classroom hunger. In 2003, Supreme Court directed that hot cooked meal should be provided to all primary school children. Subsequently, MDM was also extended to cover upper primary school children. Currently, Ministry of Human Resource Development is providing hot cooked meal of 450 calories and 12 grams of protein to every child in the primary level and 700 calories and 20 grams of protein to upper primary school children. The energy and protein requirement for primary child comes from cooking 100 grams of rice or wheat, 20 grams of pulses, 50 grams of vegetables, 5 grams of oil. And for the upper primary child comes from 150 grams of rice or wheat, 30 grams of pulses, and 75 grams of vegetables and 7.5 grams of oil. Under the Food Security Act, MDM will be supported for providing hot cooked meal to school children for foreseeable future. Currently, more than 10.35 crore children, that is 75% of the enrolled children in 11.5 lakh schools in the country are getting MDM. MDM has helped in preventing classroom hunger. It promotes school enrollment, fosters some amount of social integration, and perhaps also improves gender equity. MDM can play a major role in reducing undernutrition and preventing overnutrition in school-age children by undertaking height and weight measurements and comparing the body mass index of children twice a year, identifying undernourished lean children, getting them checked up by school health system for infections, providing lean children with double helping of MDM if low food intake is the reason behind leanness, and identifying also overnourished children and ensuring that they play and improve their physical activity. Technology for computing BMI is readily available. Currently, wall-mounted stature meter for measuring height accurately is economically available and can be bought for 200 to 300 rupees per piece. Lightweight, battery-operated digital weighing scales for weighing children accurately is also readily available and costs anywhere between 1,500 to 2,500 rupees. The mathematics of computing weight by height squared will no longer pose any problem because all of us have a mobile whose calculator can be used for identifying weight for height squared. The WHO has provided the BMI for age charts for children in the 15 to 19 years of age. What do we gain by computing BMI in children? There are 4 children in this graph. All of them are 7 years of age. The first child has normal height, weight, and normal BMI for his age. The second child is normal in its height but has low weight and low body mass index. In other words, he is a lean child. Children who have undergone more prolonged energy deprivation do not grow well and become stunted. The third child in this graph is a stunted child with low body weight, but the child has normal body mass index. The last child in this picture is stunted, is of low weight, and also has a low BMI. Thin children, irrespective of their height, need more food. Here again, we are showing you 4 children. The last child is normal in height and weight. First child is normal in height but lean. The second child is short but lean. And the third child is tall but lean. All 3 of them require additional food. So far, we have talked about undernutrition as a major problem. However, in the last 2 decades, we have a newer emerging problem, that of obesity and overnutrition. Indians are unique in many ways. We are the only country where GDP rise has been accompanied by a fall in the energy intake. After a relatively slow growth rate for 3 decades, India became the second fastest growing economy in the last decade. However, the increase in GDP growth rate and per capita income was accompanied by a progressive reduction in energy consumption. The average intake is still adequate to meet energy requirement because there has been a tremendous reduction in physical activity. The reduction in energy intake might have protected Indians from a rapid rise in overnutrition rates. This table shows us the time trends in energy intake among urban and rural population in India. These are from the surveys carried out by the National Nutrition Monitoring Bureau. As you can see, there has been a progressive reduction in energy intake between 1975-79 to 2004-05. This has also been shown in the NSSO survey data. Simultaneously, there has been changes in physical activity pattern. In the 70s, majority of Indians used to spend a lot of energy in occupational and domestic chores and getting from one place to another without mechanized transport. So, they did not have to take up any additional discretionary physical activity during leisure time. However, over the last 2 decades, there has been a progressive increase in mechanization of transport, occupational, and household activities. Consequently, there has been a steep reduction in physical activity and energy needs both in urban areas and in rural areas and among all segments of population. Perhaps the population realized this and therefore reduced their energy intake. Moderate physical activity is an essential prerequisite for good health. So, efforts have to be taken to build up awareness on importance of physical activity and create a conducive environment to increase discretionary physical activity among all segments of population. इसको के लिए आप इधर यूज करेंगे. अब देखिए ये है ट्रेगस, ये है लोअर मार्जिन, दोनों बराबर होना चाहिए. उससे लोग खिलेंगे नहीं, आप एक बार बोल चुके हैं, ठीक है. और सिर के ऊपर ये स्थिर रहना चाहिए. अभी देखिए आप इसको ले लीजिए, कितना है हाइट, आप देख के बता दीजिए.
बताओ।
टॉर्च चाहिए बेटा। National Nutrition Monitoring Bureau has been monitoring time trends in nutritional status of men and women. These data show that there has been a slow but steady decline in prevalence of undernutrition in adults. And since 90s, there has been a slow but progressive increase in overnutrition. Dual nutrition burden is seen both in women and in men. It has to be noted prevalence of both under and overnutrition is higher in women as compared to men. India has also explored how far undernutrition itself in childhood be a risk factor for overnutrition in adult life. The follow-up studies of Shanti Ghosh's cohort showed that children who were undernourished during infancy and childhood were prone for obesity, hypertension, and impaired glucose tolerance when they became adults. At 12 years, 50% of these children were underweight and only 1% were overweight. At the age of 30 years, 50% were overweight, 16% has diabetes or impaired glucose tolerance, and 16% had hypertension too. Studies carried out on body composition by Nutrition Foundation of India and several other institutions in India have shown that adiposity in Indian high-income group adolescent is much higher than adiposity in adolescents belonging to different ethnic groups in USA. Comparison between Indian and Caucasian adults have shown that for the same BMI, adiposity in Indian adults is higher. So, Indians have a proneness for higher fat content in their body. Intervention for prevention and management of overnutrition in India are relatively easy. This is because we have detected the epidemic very early. Steep reduction in physical activity has been the major factor for rise in overnutrition. The population today are becoming aware that moderate physical activity is essential for optimum nutrition and health. At this moment, if we take energetic steps to promote discretionary physical activity in all segments of the population, it will be possible to prevent the projected rise in overnutrition. At present, we have to realize nearly half Indians are normally nourished. If we continue our efforts to reduce undernutrition and take steps to prevent escalation of overnutrition, it is possible that majority of Indians will remain normally nourished and will not incur any health hazards associated either with undernutrition or with overnutrition. Another major public health problem for which there are national intervention programs are micronutrient deficiencies. Iodine deficiency disorders has been well recognized as an entity right from 1920s. In India, prevalence of iodine deficiency disorders is relatively low, excepting in the sub-Himalayan areas. But pockets of IDD exist in practically every state in India. Unlike other micronutrient deficiencies, iodine deficiency disorders are due to deficiency of iodine in water, soil, foodstuffs, and affect all socioeconomic groups living in a defined geographical area. Salt fortification with iodine has been established and is used worldwide for prevention of iodine deficiency disorder for nearly a century now. In India, the National Goiter Control Program was launched by Government of India in 1962, and the focus of intervention was in sub-Himalayan goiter belt. Following the demonstration that there are pockets of IDD in all states, it was decided to iodize entire edible salt for human consumption in the country. The National Goiter Control Program was revamped and renamed as National Iodine Deficiency Disorder Control Program. There has been a progressive improvement in access to iodized salt in the country, and as of 2009, over 90% of the household salt in India is iodized. There are huge differences between states in terms of iodization salt access. While the northern and northeastern states consume iodized salt some of the southern states have relatively low iodized salt consumption. These regional disparities are now getting corrected. It is hoped that the current trend will continue and the goal of universal access to iodized salt will be achieved, if not by 2012, at least within the next few years. Another major micronutrient problem troubling India is anemia. India and sub-Saharan Africa have very high rates of anemia. Currently, the challenges are that majority of 1.3 billion Indians from all age, physiological and socio-demographic groups are anemic. Low dietary intake of iron, poor bioavailability of iron from Indian vegetarian diets are the two major factors responsible for anemia. Can we combat this problem within our resources? The major intervention strategies for prevention of anemia in the billion plus Indian population has been given in the Iron Plus initiative. They include health and nutrition education to improve overall dietary intakes, dietary diversification, ensuring inclusion of iron and folate-rich vegetables as food items, and also include food items that promote iron absorption. Food fortification, especially introduction of iron and iodine fortified salt, is yet another major initiative. How far can the strategy for prevention of anemia be implemented in the current scenario within the existing infrastructure? Health and nutrition education to improve overall dietary intake and promote consumption of iron and folate-rich foodstuffs is possible under the National Health Mission during the Village Health and Nutrition Days. Dietary diversification and inclusion of iron folate-rich food as well as food items that promote iron absorption is possible with proper linkages with National Horticultural Mission. Introduction of iron and iodine fortified salt universally to improve iron intake is possible with the public sector NIN technology. So we should now consider this as an opportunity for affordable and sustainable intervention programs to improve iron and folate status of the entire family and prevent anemia currently. With such colorful vegetables and fruits seen even in wayside small fruit and vegetable stalls, we should be certainly able to combat micronutrient deficiency using dietary modifications. The National Iron Plus initiative envisages medicinal supplementation to vulnerable groups. Detection and treatment of anemia will also help in reducing the prevalence of anemia in vulnerable groups. Anemia cannot be diagnosed clinically. Diagnosis is by hemoglobin estimation. In view of the wide prevalence of anemia, it is not possible to screen and treat all persons with anemia. Currently, national program aims at screening for early detection of anemia among vulnerable groups such as pregnant women and children. Anemic persons are detected and provided with appropriate treatment. Treatment depends upon severity, chronicity, physiological status of the individual, and time available for correction of anemia. See, this is followed by a video. डीप ब्रीथ करना जरूरी है और उसको सबसे पहले ड्रॉप को निकालना है. फिर आप अच्छी तरह स्क्वीज करेंगे तो एक अच्छा नाइस ब्लड ड्रॉप आएगा. वो ब्लड ड्रॉप ठीक तरह से ऐसा आ जाती है तो आपका कोई दिक्कत नहीं होगा. 20 माइक्रोलीटर 2 सेकंड में मिल जाएगी. ठीक है. और अभी डुप्लीकेट भी आप करेगा. ठहरो. थिन लाइंस में करते जाएंगे तो आराम से बहुत जल्दी से सूख जाएगी. ठीक है. Vitamin A deficiency is the third micronutrient deficiency that has public health implications. Biochemical vitamin A deficiency, as shown by low levels of retinol in blood, is seen in over 20% of children in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. In the 50s and 60s of the last century, many of the states reported that blindness due to vitamin A deficiency was one of the major causes of blindness in children below 5 years of age. In 1970, the National Program Against Nutritional Blindness was initiated as a centrally sponsored scheme. Under this scheme, all children between the ages of 1 and 3 years were to be administered 2 lakh international units of vitamin A orally once in 6 months. The coverage under this program was very poor in most states. In an attempt to improve coverage, especially the first 2 doses, it was decided to link vitamin A administration to the ongoing immunization program. Under the revised regimen, single dose of 1 lakh units of international units of vitamin A was administered to all infants at 9 months of age along with measles vaccine. Subsequently, the second dose of 2 lakh international units was administered at 18 months of age along with booster dose of DPT and OPV. Currently, prevalence of Bitot spot in the 1 to 5 year old children is quite low. 3 national surveys have shown the prevalence to be between 0.6 and 0.7%. A national prophylaxis program against nutrition blindness in the 70s. Reported coverage figures under modified regimen indicate that there has been an improvement in coverage in the first dose, 50 to 75%. However, coverage under subsequent doses are still low. The 10th 5-year plan recommended that second and subsequent doses of massive dose vitamin A may be administered biannually in the pre-summer, April-May, and pre-winter, September-October period. This strategy was operationalized successfully and has resulted in some improvement in coverage across doses. In 2006-07, a policy decision has been taken to cover all children in the 9 months to 6-year age group under the massive dose vitamin A program. In view of the fact that blindness due to vitamin A deficiency is no longer seen and prevalence of Bitot spot is low, that is less than 5% in many states, many nutrition scientists feel that massive dose vitamin A program can be discontinued. As clinical vitamin A deficiency often coexists with other micronutrient deficiencies, there is a need for a broad-based dietary diversification aimed at improving overall micronutrient nutritional status in children. How do we sum this whole lot? Is combating triple burden of malnutrition a major challenge or is it an opportunity? Very often, combating triple burden of malnutrition is viewed as a major challenge, but in the Indian context, it may very well be an opportunity. Why? Because poverty and household food security are no longer the major determinants of undernutrition. Under NREGA and the Food Security Act, we have provisions to improve household food security substantially. Optimal use of ICDS, MDM, and health service interventions can reduce undernutrition in school children, preschool children, and in women. At the moment, the overnutrition rates in the country are still quite low. Overnutrition can be combated through adequate balanced diet and appropriate exercise regimen. Universal access to iodized salt is easily achievable. Effective implementation of Iron Plus initiative can reduce anemia, and increase in intake of vegetables, especially orange and yellow ones, can increase vitamin A intake and prevent vitamin A deficiency. If stunting and underweight in under 5 children is used as an indicator for assessment of nutritional status, undernutrition rates in India is similar to Sub-Saharan Africa. But if body mass index is used, a different picture emerges. Only about 20% of preschool children are undernourished. Prevalence of overnutrition in India is quite low. We should remember that more than 50% of the adult population and about 80% of children are normally nourished if BMI is used as the criteria for detection of normal nutrition. Nutrition and health education can be communicated through all modes of communication. Nutrition education regarding appropriate infant and young child feeding practices, how to prepare inexpensive balanced diet for the family, and health education on how to access the available health care is possible under Integrated Child Development Services and National Health Mission. As coverage under health and nutrition services are universal, the needed nutrition and health care can be provided by improving content and quality of health and nutrition services. We expect that the rational, responsible, and responsive population will utilize the knowledge and access to needed services to improve their nutrition and health status. In all our programs to combat macro and micronutrient problems, the people are in the center. Providing appropriate nutrition, healthcare, education programs for all the people in a coordinated fashion will have a major impact on improving nutritional status of the population. Water supply and sanitation are critical to ensure that all the beneficial effects of adequate food intake are not marred by nutrition toll due to infections. Local monitoring of the programs is essential to ensure sustainability. Community which is aware, accesses and participates is critical for any program to succeed. The country should take this opportunity to showcase how it can cope with major challenges in health and nutrition sector effectively within a very short period at an affordable cost. Thank you very much.